Hello chess friends, this is International Master Valeri Lilov, and today I'd like to talk about two key topics that a chess player needs to get better at so that he can improve his game. And what I'm going to really talk about are the topics of planning and how we can incorporate that within the everyday thought process that we actually conduct during the game. So we're going to start with a game that was played between two great players. Vladimir Kramnik was playing with white, and Sergei Tivyakov. Now, what you see is that this is a very, quiet position in a way, in a sense. However, many of white's pieces feel a little misplaced. Whenever you start looking at a position, don't ever begin with a large question like, what do I want to do, or where do I want to go, or where can I attack? But rather start thinking about the problems of each player or each side, because when you do that, you can kind of see the different qualities and values that people will be expecting, and so you realize that at this point, White would most want to have his own pieces developed and up in the play. Essentially, Black would try to do the same thing. However, his idea is going to be about making sure that he stops White from engaging and advancing quickly. So, the first thing, most important, is to identify the stage. Whenever you want to plan, you cannot do it without knowing what stage of the game you're in. You may be in a couple of different stages. You could be in the opening, early opening, late opening, early middle game, late middle game. You could even be in the end game, like early or late end game. And those are key stages. Each of them affects the position in a very significant manner, making it different and very special. So how do you decide what stage we're opening or early opening is what we call the early stage, actually. This is very important. We could actually say that this is when we're just starting with our pieces and we're making sure that most of them get out. After that, of course, we've got the late opening stage. This is when we're already completing the development and trying to make sure that our rooks get well connected. When that actually is done, we go into the early middle game stage, which is just about the moment where we connect the rooks to the point where we actually start thinking a bit more about different type of threats. And each of these stages requires a different way of planning, a different way of analyzing how a plan must go ahead. Let's take this position, for example. What is the character of the situation right now? I mean, we could certainly say that this is the kind of position which we've already completed the opening, but the lack of a target, more importantly, the fact that there is no immediate version on how or where White can attack Black's position, practically makes it very important. So we could say that this is a very, we could say this is a very early middle game type of structure, early middle game kind of position. Very important. The next thing that we need to do is to decide on the character. See, while the stage of the game is going to show you what you have to be looking for, like in the opening, early opening, we got to complete our development fast. In the late opening, maybe we can think about developing it towards the middle game, towards a certain area. In the early middle game, you actually have to think just about one thing. How do I improve my pieces? I mean, of course, it's always helpful if you have something more than that. Like, for example, you figure out, around what area or what target you might be thinking to gather your pieces or strengthen. But it's not necessary. Remember, early middle game is about improving. And now we have to decide rather where are we going to try that. Which side of the board are we going to try to improve and really feel like we can advance on through this. So let's see. Where are we really going to go? What should White choose? Well, improving pieces is not just one thing. It actually requires quite a few moves, so it happens consecutively. This is why it's important that you think about the worst placed pieces and then think of ways to get them better one after the other. Step by step, that's how we do it. For example, one great good idea that we could be thinking about could actually turn out to be the bishop. We can think about bishop d1 towards c2. Very interesting way to improve the bishop. Also, rook e1 could help out quite a bit because it's going to give our chance to think about e4, and maybe this will help us to open up the rook on its own. The knight also doesn't feel too perfect, so I guess one of the ideas would be to bring it over to f4. These are all ways to improve the position. But now remember, before you even go with that, so let me just summarize this. First, we have the stage. We are at the early middle game stage, which suggests, okay, we're supposed to improve. Think also about the character, because the character of the position is going to ultimately answer the question if you have the time to do this or not. What is character? Characters could be either static, basically which we call a simple position that is not going to be changing too quickly, or it could be a dynamic position. Dynamic is a kind of position which you believe is likely going to shift. It's likely going to change in one way or another. So depending on that character, we could decide how much time do we have. If you have, for example, a rather static position that actually is not going to change too big, in any major way, this means you've got the time to regroup, improve, and really get better. However, if you have another kind of position, if we have a more open, much more tactical, or what I often call dynamic type of position, then it means that you've got to go a little bit faster. You don't have the time to really build up slowly and move across one step at a time. You've got to be thinking about things, in a quick sense. So what is the character here? Well, apparently, it is not very tactical. Even though it's a little more open, I don't see any major or a huge change coming in. So we could actually say that this is much more of a static type of position. That means we can just go a bit slower. We don't have to rush it up. We can go slower, and we can really build up the position that we need. And most important thing that we need to do, of course, is to now figure out what types of candidates are more necessary in this position, are going to really help you or help us in that moment to build up the position that we need. Well, one idea, effectively, could be to play with bishop d1, bishop c2, knight f4, rook e1. We have the time to do that, so there's no need to worry about that. And all we have to do is just, do it. Let's go for it. So the first thing, apparently, is moving the bishop. It's interesting that Kramnik decided on a very slow and at first sight initially bad-looking approach, which however was very logical and actually quite good, because all it does is that it takes the chance to really regroup and improve us in the way we need to. So let's go for it. Bishop d1, things look good. Actually, black plays knight b6. I believe that after bishop d1, black could have tried to make a move of bishop to the c6. But then, it's just that he didn't see any immediate version or way on how he could have come out, or threaten or do whatever. So most likely, black just wanted to approach this position a little more aggressive. Knight b6 was played with the idea to at least come across, and being closer towards the a4 square is definitely going to mean something. If the bishop comes out, the knight can jump in, and most of black's pieces can actually play a good role there. So that's what he wanted. Now what happens next in this position? Bishop c2, bishop to the c6. Apparently black was clear on his intention. He just wanted to go through and advance, possibly opening up or attacking on that side. He was very clear. So what should white do? Should we just ignore that move, or we have to take an action and fight that? The move that white intended was very, very important. Block. Do not let the opponent, remember that, do not allow your opponent to come in, bother you or challenge you or do anything on the side of the board where you're playing. We want to do everything we can to stop him from making this. a4 is a strong move. It helps a lot because, first of all, it takes away the a4, so black's knight or bishop cannot move inside. And then the idea is that after black plays queen to the d7, we've got a5, knight c8, and then bishop h4. And that is brilliant. If you look at black and you think about what he was doing, he didn't do anything. He didn't achieve anything with any of his moves. They were all going back, and they were all feeling passive. On the other hand, if you look at white and what white is doing, he's actually improving. Remember, he set up a goal, and then he set up an area of the board where he was going to do it, which was basically going to be around the queen's, around the center, and the king's side. So, bishop h4, knight h7. Apparently, black couldn't have advanced that pawn and weakened his king, so he couldn't risk this, and he moved the knight, hoping to move out of the way. He did, and what did white do? Improve. Group the pieces to bring them closer to the center, and then basically we're just going to think about the e4 move. If this move is done, nothing, I literally mean nothing, can be played so that black can improve and strengthen his position. After that, black did knight d6, and white continues. It's interesting to see how much time does it take for white to really bring this to the table, but it really works like that. It's taking all that time just so we can get enough pieces on the right squares, on the improved positions. But once we do get them there, once they already stand out, then it's just going to be a matter of time. There is no trouble, there's no question. White keeps strengthening and getting better. So after the move of knight g4, black played knight f5 here, hoping to kind of drive away the bishop, and he did. But the bishop is known as a long-range piece, so it wasn't much of a cost for white, really. f6, and now what would you do? This is a huge question because, as we could see, white stands pretty well around the center, and he's got some pieces closer to it so that he could, maybe utilize their power, their strength. But then there's this question again, like, okay, white has to find, how can we advance? Like, do we shoot at the center? Do we actually take some more time to build up or regroup? What exactly do we do in this moment? What's the right way to go? Very, very good question. So what did white really play along? Well, actually, he played h3. And then what we could see is that now white is ready to not only advance for a move like rook to the e1, but also get ready for e4. Rook e1, e4, rook d1. I mean, the truth is that every single one of white's pieces is either closing into the center or it's already in there. Black is not able to do much. It's like after h3, black actually decided to play with the move of knight to the d6, rook fe1, rook ac8, and then there was this big, really important candidate move, which is all about pawn break, e4. It busts open the whole position in the center. But more importantly, what it does is that it helps us to get the remainder of white's important pieces right into the battle, so that it's really like attacking and almost destroying whatever's left of this. So this is beautiful. After that, apparently black tried knight b5. I mean, he could have taken on the e4, but then there's d5. He realized that by exchanging pawns, we can best and most effectively open up the pieces. It would have been great if white played rook a to the d1, and I have to say black wasn't ready for this, for any of that. Bishop b6, maybe queen b4. That's painful. The d6 is under attack. Bishop g3 is coming up next. Black's in trouble, and white is not. White is dominating everything in this position, from the center to the king side to the queen side. It's all in white's command. Amazing. In line with that, it's like basically black played knight b5. He kind of said, I'm not going to open up the center, and I'm going to try something different, hoping that it will give me a chance to push you back. So he did that. So what did white do after that? Well, after that, white plays queen to the d2, h5, and then knight e3, and that was wonderful. See, the already advanced pieces have a lot of capabilities like in this position, so they don't have to really like do anything. They can just sit around, keep the position solid, and then we have the d5 and other stuff under our play. So black played d takes to d and then d5. In the end, black has to do d takes to d because there's just no other way. He's got to do it in order to exchange the pawn and maybe like get rid. But then white does a move of d5, beautiful and effective. d5, f5, and then of course white plays with knight takes f5, queen takes to the d5, queen takes d5, bishop takes to the d5, and surely white played the move of bishop to the a4. Strong, it's efficient, and it worked out brilliantly. And I always recommend it like that. Think of this. It's like, who gets to take the initiative? It's if you can do it, if you could use your pieces to pressure your opponent, to really make it work, that's all you ever care about. So bishop a4, bishop takes b5, f takes to the e4. Black can take on the e4 due to the exchange, and then knight d6. So we can understand black actually had to run. Then there's knight d6. It's amazing, isn't it, how just one goal in the position can cause all those sorts of problems. And now, of course, the goal and everything changes, but it's already impossible for black to defend it. It's like that knight on the d6, the pawn on a6, everything else happening, it makes black's position look awful. So the pawn continues going, e5, captured, and after rookie the c1, it was game over. Once the c2 falls, apparently nobody can stop the a, so white was winning very, very easy. So I have to admit, this was a good game of seeing how to evaluate a certain position. Now, when it comes down to planning, there is another thing that you need to know, and this is the second type of situations, often as I get to call them, the dynamic positions. In this game that was played between Kramnik and Topalov, there is one move that white can make that can help him to be most successful. However, first we want to figure out what stage we're at. Late opening. The development is almost complete, and we are at the late opening stage. So we have to think about moves that can help us to eventually towards our middle game. And second, what's the character? Very dynamic. Things can change any second. The center can change any second. We can't leave this quietly. Based on that, white figured out that the goal will be to open up the position so he can take advantage of the black king. And the move of f5 works almost instantly. A couple really beautiful changes come out, which give white an immense pressure on the queen side. And even though he doesn't win necessarily with it, the attack taking place on that area and everything that was going to happen, it led black to a demise soon after white prepared his pieces and sacrificed, so that there's no chance to stop everything going. I really believe that the questions are the most important part of it, but try to remember, stage of the game, the character, then the outline of moves you could follow, and more importantly, starting with an idea of how much time do I have, the pacing. That is what I call key.